Well, joining me now in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is a former White House chief ethics lawyer, Richard Painter, who worked in the George W. Bush administration. Good to have you on the program, sir. Your immediate thoughts on Trump's comments about the four congresswomen?
Well, this started as a spat among the Democrats in the United States House of Representatives, the four congresswomen and some others strongly disagreeing with Speaker Nancy Pelosi on a number of issues. But even though inappropriate comments were made on both sides there, what we've seen is Donald Trump jump into this and make racist comments about the four congresswomen and suggesting that they should leave our country. They are all four American citizens. And for someone in the presidency to suggest that his political opponents should leave the country is a very dangerous thing. And the racial overtones are also dangerous. This is something we should not tolerate in the United States.
So as somebody who is a lawyer who was within the ethics committee within the White House, is this something that the president is willing to take the risk for? i.e., he's willing to be unethical, willing to be racist, if the end game is he can unsettle the Democrats and maybe help himself stay in the White House for 4 more years?
This is the standard playbook of a dictator. This is not the playbook of the president of the United States or the leader of any other democratic country. The House of Representatives needs to immediately start an impeachment inquiry, have hearings, and vote out articles of impeachment so there can be a trial in the Senate. They're not doing their job in the House of Representatives. They're not impeaching him, and that's why he's doing this. He's ignoring their subpoenas. Even though he's obligated to comply with the subpoenas. He is attacking the free press with rhetoric we haven't seen since Hitler talked about the press in Germany. And now he's talking about his political opponents the way dictators do. We should not tolerate this in the United States.
I'm curious about the difference between rhetoric and actions. And again, I'm going to delve into your former role working within the Bush administration. Can't we look at it and say, well, you know, Trump just says mean stuff? If we look at George W. Bush, isn't, I don't know, killing tens of thousands of Iraqis arguably more racist, more unethical, and more impeachable than saying mean racist things and killing nobody?
You know, going back over whether it's the Vietnam War under Lyndon Johnson or the Iraq War under George W. Bush and Tony Blair, that's what Trump does. He always points to somebody else. He could point to the Bushes. He could point to Obama. He could point to someone else and say, look at them. Look at Hillary Clinton. Instead of focusing on his own conduct, we need to deal
he's not
with
doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing
now.
it. But I'm doing it, Mr. Painter. I'm doing it. I'm saying, well,
I don't think that
these
helps.
are words and those were actions.
For example, he says, look at what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, putting the Japanese in the internment camps during World War II. This is no worse than that. I mean, we've heard these arguments, and these arguments are very destructive. We need to face the here and now, and what this president is doing. This president is threatening his political opponents with jail. We have never seen that before. And if we don't learn from history that words very soon are translated into actions, we're going to be in very big trouble in the United States. This is the way Hitler talked when he was a candidate for president of Germany in 1932 and then in the parliamentary elections. We need to see the warning signs, and we need to take action now.
And you think that he can be impeached?
I believe the House of Representatives certainly could impeach him. And there will be a trial in the Senate. And the evidence will be clear that he has not only spoken these words, but he has committed criminal acts. He has obstructed justice in the investigation of the Russia interference in our election. The entire second half of the Mueller report makes it clear he obstructed justice. The first half of the Mueller report, much of it redacted, needs to be disclosed to the public so we see what the contacts were with the Russians, whether or not those contacts were a criminal conspiracy. We cannot have a president who is in bed with the Russians. We can't have that in the United States. There needs to be a trial in the United States Senate. And if the Senate has a sham trial, they choose to acquit him, we can vote them out as well as vote him out in 2020. But we need to proceed with this.
Richard Painter, great to have you on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, joining me now in La Jolla, California, is former U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman, who's now the creator and executive producer of the podcast Talking Feds. In Washington, D.C. is Ivan Garcia-Hidalgo. He's a Republican strategist and the president of the Hispanic Leadership Council. Good to have you both on the program, gentlemen. Ivan, why is the president saying such racist stuff?
I don't think anything he said is racist. I think he's been right on the money with the description of these four radicals that we have in Congress
Go
today.
back to where you came from. How is that not
I think
racist?
he should have not even gotten involved. Well, what's racist about it?
Okay, if I told you to go back to where you came from. Ivan, go back to where you came from. Ivan, go back to where you came from. You don't take offense?
Well, you have to understand, read, and listen to the entire context, right? You're saying go back to where you came from and see exactly what's going over there. Those countries are corrupt. Those countries are a disaster. They're an embarrassment to society, and that's the exact same policy that they want to bring to America.
So you're bringing up the context.
So I think it's a fair.
Okay, Ivan,
it's
you're bringing
absolutely
up the context.
fair.
Okay. They're criticizing him. He's
Well,
saying, hold on.
But you have to use the context.
Okay, great. So I'm
right?
saying, let's take the context. He's saying you cannot criticize, and if you want to criticize, you should go back to where you came from. He criticized Obama for 8 years, so should Trump go back to Germany because he didn't like America at that time?
Well, I think that's a different. Altogether. It's completely different. What do you mean? These people are radical socialists, borderline communists, and Trump is definitely not a communist. There is no room in America for communists or for socialism. That's just the way it is. That is an absolute fact. What he is addressing right now, or what he addressed the other day through the tweets, was exactly that. The problem here is that the media and everybody hates Trump. They're blinded and they have this mental derangement that anything that Trump says is racist.
Okay.
But when Speaker Pelosi was attacking these same people,
she didn't tell them to go back to where they came from.
Pelosi was attacking these same people, nobody had a problem.
Okay, this is interesting.
AOC did call the speaker, but AOC called the speaker a racist. And that's what liberals do. That's what these radical
let me take that.
people do.
Okay, this is
when they
interesting.
Don't have an argument, when they're losing on the issues.
I want to ask
but
Harry,
when they're losing on the issues, they yell and scream racism.
Okay, I want to bring Harry in here because an interesting point that was made up here is Speaker Pelosi versus these young women in Congress. Harry, it was mentioned by Richard Painter as well. It seems as if you had this spat within the Democratic Party, the older guard and the newer guard, the progressive wing versus Pelosi's wing. You have this spat and Trump sees it going on and he smells blood. So has that been the genesis of this? He smelled blood and he's doing this to divide the Democrats and it's working, presumably, Harry.
I think it's an arguable account of the genesis, or it might just be Trump's, nativist instincts. I think I just heard Ivan say there's no room in America for socialists. Of course, these four duly elected representatives are not socialists, but you know what? Of course there's room in America for socialists. There's room in America for people of all political stripes. That's the promise of America. There's no sense debating whether this was xenophobic or racist. Of course it was. And it sounds like the crazy ramblings of a guy on the back of the bus. This is supposed to be the moral leader of the country and the free world. And it's stunning to consider that this is the kind of stuff he is shopping. Is he doing it to divide the base, or because it works with certain people, or to put Pelosi on the defensive? That's a secondary or even tertiary question. He's doing it. The president of the United States is making, as president, he's using his bully pulpit to actually tell American-born citizens they should go back to where they came from. It is stunning, repugnant, and actually only as of this morning, finally, some members of his own party are beginning to recognize it. But this is our president. And it's a repugnant state of affairs that this is who represents us morally to one another and to the free world.
Ivan?
Look, again, Harry's a liberal. He loves that wing. What's amazing here, Harry, is that in the past, Nancy Pelosi was considered a radical, a liberal, and now she is the voice of reason within your party. So think about that. Think how radicalized the Democratic Party has become. You say there is room for socialism and communism in the U.S. Of course, the First Amendment allows that, right? But we as Americans and the framers of this country did not believe in that, right? And the ideology, just the ideology is destructive. It leads to corruption. It leads to, what do you mean, why? Look at history. Do you need a history lesson? I mean, I'm not here to give you a history lesson.
Okay, but Ivan,
if you're asking me why socialism and why communism is destructive, I don't know what we're having a conversation.
Ivan, history does tell us as well that leaders who tend to tell minorities to go back to where they came from, that doesn't end well as well. Right, Ivan?
World War I. Yeah. If I can make a very quick point, I think there's a major difference between how radical Ivan, just a quick point, please, in response. There's just a major difference between how radical or what political stripe we think Pelosi. Thank you. We see I think there's a very major important difference between how radical or not Nancy Pelosi is and the sort of outright rank demagoguery that Trump is propounding. It's a very separate issue when the president says to duly elected representatives, go back to where you came from. It's just not responsive to say, oh, well, the Democratic Party has gotten more left than it even has.
Okay, so Ivan, I want to give you a bit of a timeline here.
Harry, you know that. Harry, you know they've been radicalized.
Okay, Ivan, I want to give you a bit of a timeline. Okay, so Ivan, Trump does have a long list of racist comments during his tenure. This is a fact, right? He pushed the birther conspiracy, suggesting President Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. He called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S. When Trump was campaigning in 2016, he said Mexicans are rapists. And as president, he said there were very fine people on both sides when he spoke about white supremacists, while disparaging Haiti and some African countries with a word I can't say on television, but he called them specific types of countries. It started with SH, right? So, Ivan, when we look at this, when we look back to birtherism, I mean, birtherism was maybe a dog whistle. This is throwing raw, juicy meat at the dog now. It's not even a dog whistle anymore. Come on, you have to accept that, Ivan.
Well, no, but absolutely, I will not accept that. I don't think anything that you've mentioned was racist at all. I think there was a legitimate concern about Obama's birthplace that started with Hillary Clinton. It wasn't something that Trump did. Trump picked it up and he had fun with it. He had fun, and he made Obama pull out his entire birth certificate, something that he didn't want to do. So that was a win for the president. He wanted to have him open up his college records because there's a lot of speculation about him claiming a certain ethnicity or a certain religion.
Ivan, when I spend time with KKK, actual KKK in Arkansas, KKK members, one of the reasons why they considered their president at that time, Barack Obama, illegitimate and worthy of death was because they believed he wasn't born in America and he was born in Africa, right? So this isn't just a game where the president goes, I made Obama sweat a little bit.
But who started that, right?
Okay, it's Hillary Clinton. Blame the Democrats.
That was started by the Hillary Clinton campaign. That's factually accurate.
Okay, Trump's innocent of everything.
What do you mean not blaming? That's factually accurate. That is factually accurate. That's factually accurate. I think the problem here is that you guys here on the left, on the media,
I'm not on the left,
anything that Trump says is automatically racist. Anything that this president says is racist, and you can't do that.
Strategic mindset. Ivan, let me jump into the mindset a little bit.
You have to look at.
Let me jump into the mindset a bit.
Go ahead.
Let me jump into the mindset a bit.
Okay.
You're a Republican strategist. All this stuff that he's saying seems to have worked. It got him elected in 2016. Is it a legitimate plan now to say this stuff about AOC, about Ilhan Omar, and so on, tactically, to say this stuff, to say racist stuff about them, go back to the countries that you came from, even though they were born in the United States, in order to get him re-elected. Is that a fair plan?
Well, look, you know, putting everything aside and bringing objectivity, like you're saying, absolutely. I think it's a great strategy. You look at their approval numbers; they're in the single digits. They are not liked by anybody in this country except a few very radicalized people. So absolutely, I think it's a great strategy. What the president is doing is making these four radicals the face of the Democratic Party, and I think the American people are going to reject that come 2020. Absolutely. I think it was a tactical mistake to get involved right now because there is that infighting between AOC and that squad with the leadership in the House, with the Democrats. They were killing each other. There was a Democratic civil war, and the president should have let them go at it and tear each other up.
Okay.
I think it was a
Harry
mistake to
Litman.
get involved now.
Harry
But,
Litman, this is going to
you
make
know,
him win.
At the same time, I think, you know, making them the face.
Okay, so Harry,
Go ahead.
he's doing this and it's going to make him win. How do you feel about that?
But, look, I don't see this primarily as a matter of tactics and strategy. The president of the United States, like the very first Republican, is supposed to promote the better angels of our nature. Trump is self-consciously promoting the worst devils of our nature. If it works, it's no justification. That's been perhaps it has worked throughout history. Perhaps that's part of what animates the base. If that's what he's doing, maybe even more shame on him than if he's expressing his true views. Might it work? I could see it either way. I have more faith in the American people, but I'm no expert at that. What I do know is hearing this garbage from the President of the United States is a sad day for all Americans.
Okay, and Ivan, at the same time, I want to talk about other policies beyond words. So we had the impending ICE raids. They didn't happen, but they created a lot of anxiety. We have the debate over what's happening on the border, the conditions of the camps. Pence was there, Lindsey Graham was there. Should we be looking at all of this as one broader package that says that America first, and if you happen to be a minority, this place is not necessarily for you?
Well, I don't think that's accurate at all. This country is one of the most welcoming countries in the history of the planet. We allow millions of people every single year to come here, but in a legal and orderly fashion. I think the situation at the border is unfortunate. Customs Border Patrol, ICE, are law enforcement agencies. They're not nursery school or elementary school or some type of daycare facility to go take care of children. You know, it's a situation that could be easily remedied and fixed by the Congress. It has to be addressed by both parties. It can't be the situation where it's let's do anything to try and harm Trump. Everything is anti-Trump. If we really want to do something and fix the problem, it has to be bipartisan in nature. The Democrats have to step up, come to the table, and negotiate and have real conversations. You know, there's issues with TPS, with DACA. You know, I think a lingering conversation about an overall comprehensive immigration reform that needs to happen in some capacity. You know, those are big questions and big issues that right now are being, you know, played in a very partisan manner. I think the Hispanic community is being utilized by the Democratic Party with a lot of demagoguery, but zero action. And I think it's a shame. I think the Republican Party has really allowed the situation to continue because they haven't brought any serious propositions or bills to the table to correct this as well. So when we look at the situation, yeah, you know what? This started under President Obama. He built the cages. He separated families. This administration has continued it. I think it's about time that we fix the problem. But in order to do that, we need to secure the border. We need to change the rules and the laws, especially the asylum laws that the administration is proposing.
Okay.
You know, and we can't have hundreds of thousands and millions of people invading our country through the southern border. That needs to be controlled.
Trump said conditions at the detention center had, quote, great reviews, almost as if he was talking about a hotel on TripAdvisor. Harry Litman, with all of that in mind, given that Trump is saying this about serving congresswomen who have a background in, you know, countries that are further away and countries that he might have preconceived notions about. At the same time, Republicans are saying, Democrats, you've got to work with us on issues like immigration. Are we going to reach a point where the Democrats say we can't work with this president at all on these things?
Well, I mean, it could be, and that is actually the origin of the political spat between the 4 Democrats and Pelosi, the 4 Democrats thinking they gave too much. Again, look, there is a political side of this where I think the evidence is pretty strong that Trump has been high-handed, insisting on certain goals, especially the wall, that really don't do very much but fit his kind of rhetorical stance and appeal to the people. But then again, there's the moral issue. He treats non-Americans as subhuman, and we have a dehumanizing policy that does separate families. That is way beyond anything that happened with Obama, and that hurts us with the rest of the world. That I think is not just a moral issue, but a practical one. Will the Democrats come to the table? I think they have somewhat already, and it's just a matter of trying to give, the sort of mad king something of what he wants in order to get some sensible immigration reform. It's tough stuff. It's been like this for decades, frankly. The immigration system is broken. I don't disagree with that, but I also think it's problematic to stoke the fires of Trump's nativist impulses here.
Harry, I want to ask you maybe a bit of a legal question here and a tactical question from a legal perspective as someone who was in that Attorney General's office, right? So we heard Richard Painter earlier on saying we need to impeach him. Yes, we can pass it through the House, but it seems unlikely. I'm no lawyer and I'm no US politician. It goes to the Senate, it's not going to happen, right? So would the Democrats be making a major mistake? I'm not going to ask you whether you think his actions are impeachable or not. I'm going to ask you, will it be a waste of time, even if they believe it to the ends of the earth? Is it a waste of time trying to impeach President Trump?
Waste of time is the least of it. And yes, it goes without saying his actions have been more impeachable than those of any president in history. There is this now political calculus of not waste of time, but backfiring. Would Trump be able to make a sort of Brer Rabbit strategy of stoking the base in order to be reelected? I think it's quite possible. I understand why Pelosi is worried about it, but I just point out we've got a problem with our Constitution that here we are in the sort of emergency break glass moment, and everyone seems paralyzed. I've thought about why this is so. It's beyond the scope of this program, but I understand why they're skittish about it politically, even though the sort of moral or broader kind of political case for it is strong.
Ivan, very finally, if the Democrats do try to impeach, would this be a gift to Donald Trump?
Look, I think the Democrats would be crazy to go to impeachment. Nancy Pelosi's a very, very tenured, very, very smart politician. She knows, she's been around for a long time. She knows it's not going to get any traction. It might not even pass the House controlled by the Democrats, and obviously it would fail in the Senate. The problem right now is the economy is doing so great. The country is doing so great. Unemployment at historic numbers for women, for minorities, blacks, Hispanics, everybody is. This is possibly one of the best economies in the history of this nation. So the Democrats really don't have an argument. Their argument and their propositions are socialism. You know, they're screaming in the streets for socialism, and in Venezuela, people are screaming in the streets for water, food, and toilet paper. That's the oxymoron here. It's amazing. Democrats want chaos, destruction, misery, and corruption, and they can't take advantage and they can't celebrate that the country is doing so great. Probably one of the greatest economies ever.
Okay. And
they can't sit there and say, hey, you know what? Things are great. How do we improve on this? How do we extend this to everybody else? No, they don't think that way. They want to tear it down.
Okay, but what the president's been saying. Okay,
that's why that ideology is extremely dangerous.
I know, but it also does sound like ideology if you say that things are so great, and if you refuse to accept that they're great, then you should go back to where you came from. I'm out of time, Ivan, but you're cordially invited to come back on the Newsmakers. Harry, you as well. Thank you very much for joining us.